Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. Tonight, we're going to check in, or this episode, we're going to check in with some folks in Cottage Grove. They had a big issue and still are not out of the woods yet, but they had an issue with homelessness and lawlessness. Those are two very similar issues sometimes. And it ended up in a recall of 3 city councilors. We're going to have 3 people who were part of that conversation and what's going on, because I really wanted to check out. They were supposed to clean up some of these homeless and camps because they were becoming just ridden with crime and drugs and things like this. And Cottage Grove is a super cool little town. My wife would describe it as a cute place, really authentic downtown, and very into preservation of history and covered bridges and nature and all that. And for years, it's been a community where a good portion of the community, an easy way to label it is there's a lot of hippies and there's a lot of loggers. And then there's a bunch of people in between. But when it used to be that when it came to what's best for Cottage Grove, in the end, they would all agree. But that's kind of taken a turn when the city started allowing homeless people to camp all over the community. And so we're going to talk about that. And hopefully from that, we'll learn something that we can all take with us. So our sponsors tonight, I always say tonight, but it's not really tonight. Albert Taylor, Endless Possibilities, an organization in Eugene and Springfield that works with people with different abilities. So if you're looking for a job, you're looking for a career change, looking for something where you go home at night and you really understand that what you do matters, these are the people to look to. Also, Dr. Michael Bratton, Christian Caring and Trusted, dentist in Eugene, really cares about freedom of speech and really cares about your civil liberties. Our other sponsors, Greg Hinkle, New American Funding right here in Helena, Montana. If you're looking for a mortgage, he's the guy. He can handle it, whether it's in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, or here in Montana. And Montana Oral Surgeons and Dental Implant Center. They have offices in Bozeman. They have them in Butte, Great Falls, and Helena. And the nice thing about them is they put you out. You don't have to stay awake for the trauma. And Matt McCarl in Eugene, Oregon, New Leaf Hyperbarics and Wellness Center. Hyperbarics, if you tell him it's your first time and you say you saw it on Rick Dancer, he'll give you a deal. They also do light therapy, massage, anything new that's out there. In fact, Matt is so new and innovative that almost every time we try to advertise for him on YouTube, they pull it. I think that's a compliment. And right there in Crestwell, Oregon, Rain Peak American Institute. The winter's coming, fall's coming. Now is the time when you need to get your things in order. Get on the program where you can have them come out and check before you get. It's supposed to be a really, really cold, wet winter in all over Oregon, Montana, everywhere. And you don't want to be in the middle of a snowstorm and have your heat pump die. All right, let's bring on our guest. Johanna, there you are. We'll bring on, this is Tanya. She's new to our program. So everybody be nice to her. No mean comments. And Mike, you can say whatever you want about Mike. He's the main troublemaker. So although all 3 of you are kind of like the 3 Stooges at times, aren't you? Huh?
Well, we don't know who's Larry, Curly, or Moe, but we'll go from there.
No, you guys have, we know who Curly is. So tell me, the last time we talked, there was a recall in Cottage Grove. 3 city councilors were recalled, basically, many reasons, but basically because they weren't listening to the public, you guys and people that agree with you, who were saying, we need to do something different about the homeless and lawlessness issue that's taking over our community. So Tanya, you haven't talked. We had Johanna and Mike on last time, but tell me, you moved from Marcola into Cottage Grove. You looked at this house. It was in a neighborhood that's up and coming. People were remodeling. You call the city. They say, no, we got a handle on all this. Everything's going to be fine. You move in and much to your surprise, your backyard is a drug dealer area.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. We closed down our house the same day as it shut down. And then the homeless camp, the first one that I know of anyways, got set up behind our house, behind the community center and the library, up on the loading dock, literally like 3-4 feet from my fence, from my backyard. And it was a lot. In fact, every time I think about a lot of the things I witnessed, I mean, I start shaking. I get like really bad anxiety surrounding it. And yeah, and I would call the cops all the time. I mean, people beating each other up, walking around with knives, machetes, and they wouldn't do anything because Rich Myers, the city manager at the time, told them to cease and desist. And so, of course, we went and got a whole security system and cameras and, and a lot of self-defense stuff around the house.
But you were telling me too that I mean, for a while you were like, most of us, we have compassion, and we think you wanted to help. And tell them about like the money, the guitar, that kind of stuff, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So I had befriended one of the guys on the loading dock because I would go back there and I would, give tents or sleeping bags, food, clothes, toiletries. And I would talk to him, and kind of give him some friendship. And Mike, he had an addiction problem, and we would talk about it, and he was aware of it. And anyways, I can't. I went back there one night to feed him some steak and mashed potatoes, and I can still see him sitting there eating it, and he's like, "Oh, this is so good," and thank you so much. And and then the next day he was dead. He OD'd. And the first responders back there all the time, administering Narcan over and over again. And then there was this one lady, I had befriended her, and anyways, it was really cold out. So I got her a tent and a sleeping bag. And then we were talking, and she talked about how she missed playing guitar. Well, my son that now lives in Denver left his guitar here. It wasn't being used. So I ran in the house and got a guitar and ran back out and gave it to her. And literally the next day while I was at work, she solicited my husband for sex while I was at work. Yeah, I already said that. And wanted him to take her to the casino, and she would show him a good time. And, so that was a lot. Another lady was beating up another camp member, and, I just had it. And I walked out and I seen this going on, and I just screamed at her, and I was like, "Quit hitting him." And so she came up on the loading dock and, like kind of leaning over towards my fence and stated, "I'm going to haunt you in your dreams, little girl." And, of course, I ran back in the house and got self-defense stuff. And at first, when I first started experiencing a lot of these things, I would call the cops all the time. And there was a 911 operator at the time that was super cynical, just absolutely no help. Well, is a crime really being committed? It was terrible. In fact, it got to the point, and nothing against Karens, two of my favorite college professors were named Karen. But it got to where I would call up and go, "Yeah, this is Karen at this address, and this is going on again." And nothing, just nothing.
So Johanna, what's happened since all that? Since last time we talked. So I can show the pictures. This is what it looked like before, right?
Are those the ones that I just sent you?
Yes.
Okay, that is actually after the campers left. So it's you can see it's in a bit more of a disarray than previous footage you had, because they were going through. Nobody left until the very last minute. They brought in, this was this past Thursday, they brought in the sheriff's department, the state police, local police, and a security to help people transition out of that, because they were going to lock the gates, close them so that they can clean up the area.
Who is operating this camp?
These were unmanaged camps.
Well, it was the city.
Well, so yeah, they were city sanctioned. These were areas the city said, okay, if you need a place to be, you don't have a home, you can stay at these camps. A couple of years ago, they passed a land management use for public lands and named one after another about 30 different public properties to be used by the homeless. As each one filled up, they had a list, in priority. So this was the first one was the Dairy Mart site, then the Douglas camp, was the second one to fill up.
And how big is Cottage Grove for people that don't know? Population wise?
Almost 11,000.
So, and then you had how many of these folks? Do they know how many people were living there?
It's hard to say. A lot of people came and went. A lot of newcomers all the time. So at one camp, they said there was over 60 in that one fenced-in area. The other one, they said there was about 50. But in the end, here probably less than half of that. It just looked like a lot because there were a lot of accumulated things out there. Stolen property, as you saw in the one, a lot of bicycles and bicycle parts. It was a chop shop, I guess, new phrase that I learned, and just a lot of stolen goods. And people would give them a lot of things and they would just be tossed aside. And they had dumpsters. They had garbage facilities there, but there was a cat and kittens that were found abandoned there. And mostly they found a lot of rats after people left. Tents would be picked up and there would be rat nests everywhere. And neighbors were complaining about they're like literally killing hundreds of rats now. Exterminator was brought in that next day to address that. And all over social media, you see people are talking about addressing this issue right now.
Yeah.
So when did they start moving the people out?
Well, they were given 2 weeks notice and they were told, at 1 week and then at 72 hours. So they were given 2 weeks. We're going to lock the gates at 10 a.m. on the 22nd. So they were given 2 weeks notice, but nobody moved until that very last minute when the authorities showed up to say, okay, and from the footage we've seen, everything looked very peaceful. They helped them, get their things. They gave them, okay, here's another 10 minutes. So by noon, I believe, was when they actually locked the gate on the one on the one camp.
So, Mike, what has this done to your town?
As far as, I think the biggest thing is for the first couple of years, people really felt hopeless because they went to the city council, called the police, everything, and nothing ever changed because of the way they had things running. And I think what this has done is shown that, no, you can make changes and it will be better for the community. And it's going to take some time. But what I've seen just in this last week is, the amount of foot traffic to bike traffic has decreased phenomenally. This last weekend was the first time I was able to leave a window open in my house at night and not get woken up. So, and that's over 2 years where, from people screaming or yelling or whatever, you just couldn't leave your windows open if you were anywhere around those camps, basically. So a lot of people don't understand that. And then, it's going to be a healing process because, Joanna mentioned about the rats. They are prevalent out there. And we're having to take, steps to mitigate that process out there among our houses. And then they're fairly intuitive. The ones that really wanted to move stuff out, they moved it outside the camps. And that will allow them another few days to get that stuff up along. I'll send you a picture later, but just along Douglas Street on the opposite side by the railroad tracks, there's a bunch of stuff all laid out there. What's been going on?
Or Tanya, because Tanya, you were talking to me a little about this. What in terms of, because you have your detractors, you have people that think you're wrong, and it's kind of divided the community a little, has it?
It's divided the community a lot, I would say. It's hard because when we come out and speak out against, you know, how all this stuff is being managed, because Cottage Grove does not have the resources to effectively, really, truly help these people. We don't have cahoots. We don't have the police force, a jail, mental health hospital. We don't have any of the stuff. You know, we don't have all the things that Eugene or Portland, you know, a big metropolitan area has. We are a little town, and so we don't have the resources to really effectively deal with this. And I don't understand why the opposition, I guess, is so on board with, you know, wanting to have all these camps and not listening to the tax-paying citizens. You know, we pay our taxes, we work, we, you know, keep our property really nice. And so, yeah, it's really frustrating because it's like, what am I doing, you know, busting my ass over here and paying all these taxes, and all of it's going to these people, you know, instead of, you know, fixing my streets, or, you know, the streets are horrible here. But yeah, the division is just bad. And a lot of it is, what happens is the minute you say something about being against having the homeless camps, you're considered, you know, you don't have any empathy, you don't have any compassion. And, you know, so you get attacked on that front. And it's like, I have more compassion and empathy. Same thing, you know, I don't know Mike very well, but Joanna has done a lot, and I have nothing but admiration and respect for her. And she gets attacked all the time. The city meeting that I went to and spoke at, there was chalk written, you know, slander, horrible things written about her when you're walking into the city hall building. Yeah, it just is, it's sad because we're just working to try to help everybody. And it's, yeah, it's just a lot of division.
Go ahead, Johanna.
I think a lot of people are really naive about this particular population. We saw, you know, everybody wants to help, but they don't realize that people living on the streets are much hardier. You know, they want to call people the most vulnerable among us when they're really not. They actually have learned a lot of survival techniques and are able to handle things that many of us actually couldn't, you know, living outside. There was someone who was saying, oh my gosh, there's been an elderly woman displaced. She's walking with a walker. Oh my gosh, she has no more home, right? And that sounds awful. So I'm like, well, this would be a rare one. Tell me a little bit more about her and let's see what we can do, you know, because certainly we don't want someone who's really helpless out there, someone who's not a drug addict, someone who's not, you know, we want to support people where we can and people who really want help. Well, because it's such a small community, right away, people were messaging me and saying, oh, no, this is this person. Yes, she's in her 70s or 80s, and she is disabled, but she's been kicked out of several nursing homes. She stole over $300,000 from a partner. She's a thief, you know, and she's a drug addict. And I'm just like, whoa, okay. You know, thank goodness for a small town. There's more to it that, you know, if we really look into it, it's like, don't invite someone into your home until you really know who that person is. Because this other person who was very well-meaning, wanted to help her, who felt very bad. I mean, this person who wanted to help was so upset seeing this elderly person, this elderly woman, fearful that she was going to be victimized. She wanted to do something and said, I can't sleep until I know that this woman is okay. But then we found out a little bit more. And there's a lot of people who are new to addressing this situation. You know, on the surface, we want to help people. Of course, that's our human nature. We want to rescue people. If we could just give them a shower, clean clothes, a job and a home, and everything will be fine. That's not the reality. We even have a counselor who would sleep in the camps to get to know people. But that sent a really wrong message to the community. I can't tell you how many times I stood up at council and said, look, these places are not safe. You're creating these dark, you know, hideaway places. Every week you see at least 2 arrests from the police for people who have outstanding warrants in other areas. We hear about the 13 and 14-year-olds being trafficked. We hear about the ODs in there now. So what we've done essentially is we're closing they've been closed, and now all of this darkness is being exposed, and we have to address it in some way. We have to do something. And I'm really appreciative of the firm stance that the city, since the recall, the city staff has taken such firm action.
Good.
that we are very hopeful, as these other guys were saying, we're very hopeful now that, things are looking up, that we can affect change. We certainly, no one wants anyone to be hurt, or left out in the elements. And those of us who are working in the field are working to keep that from happening, to address and support our local population. And many people, I believe, have left the area that were not from here.
What used to kind of blow me away when I first when I first came out with when I was living still up in the area in Oregon, and we started calling it lawlessness. And why are we allowing this lawlessness to enter our community? And then we started talking about compassion. And is it compassionate to allow people who are addicted to drugs to live on the streets at squalor positions and with no running water? I mean, is that really compassion, or is that just another way of turning a blind eye to what's really going on? And it used to blow me away because I'd go down and interview these people and talk to them, and they'd freely admit they came here because they could get free medical, free food, free, they had a free place. They didn't, and they were honest about it. And I said, have you ever talked to a city councilor? And I'd never heard a city councilor go down there and really sit there and ask questions about what it was why they were here. It was always our people. These weren't our people. Our homeless people were mostly in shelters. And the ones that were coming there because we were giving everything. We were making it Club Med for not the homeless. We were making it Club Med for every transient and drug dealer and person who didn't, a mentally ill person. And that's not compassionate. And what about the tax-paying community and the people that live there that pay taxes and want their kids to be safe? So you have to put up with that. And so I think it's really impressive what you've done. But Johanna, I know you've been blasted by some of the rag papers in Eugene and misquoted, and people. What set the record straight for me?
I don't even know where to begin on that. I mean, there's so many details that they just kept, they want to align me politically and make it about a political issue.
Yeah, so now you're a MAGA. See, I am too.
Right wing, and I'm just like, this is just common sense. What's in front of me, I can see what's in front of me and what's happening. And that was, why I got involved in the recall too, is because these three folks were very politically aligned. Everything was about their politics and their agenda. And I'm like, this is not about Cottage Grove. This is not about what people here are experiencing. I was hearing about people being random acts of violence, untreated mental illness. I don't know if you know, but we just had 9 businesses had their windows smashed in historic downtown. Their front windows by somebody who had untreated mental illness. I mean, that's a huge deal to our downtown. I think people are they're stepping up now. They're waking up, to what's going on. And the media loves a crisis. Everything is a crisis. And they don't call me and ask me generally my thoughts, my opinions. I try to put in and ask for corrections. I'm completely ignored.
They don't care because they don't care. They don't care about the facts. They care about the narrative that it fits with what they see as the important issues. It's really interesting because I watch this with media nationwide and everything. It's like they think that they've always thought, even when I was in the business, I remember they used to say that you have your audience is basically an 8th grade education out there. So they think they're there to steer you in the right direction. And when someone like you three come along, you start challenging their ignorance, not stupidity, their ignorance. And then you guys start shining a light on this very dark thing, and it exposes it. And now people don't know what to do. So I always kind of wonder what that must feel like to be like, you're for them, they really feel like they're so compassionate, but really, are you being compassionate, or is this just being virtuous? And is it virtue signaling? And how is that compassionate to Mrs. O'Leary, who lives down the street, who's 80 years old and has lived in Cottage Grove, and her property values have dropped now because of the houses, because of drug dealers, and she doesn't feel safe? How is that compassionate to her? Or, you, Tanya, with your family, living next door to this thing, and I think at some point you guys have stood up and said, enough. This is
Enough.
done. And that takes guts. And it also, you guys, I mean, there's people in your town that just don't like you.
Yeah, I was terrified to make too big of a stink, because it's like, well, they know where I live, and so living in fear all the time, and knowing that I couldn't depend on law enforcement or the city to protect me, so living in that kind of fear and that kind of state all the time. I went to him and I said, could we do at least background checks or find out who's camping out behind my house? Because it started out on the loading dock. Then they moved into concrete barriers with the chain link dog kennel thing, whatever it is, and put the tents inside of that. And it was just hard. And I would call like the 911 operator. Like I called, when the guy was hitting the dog with a hammer. And I mean, I'm still just, it was horrible. And I yelled at him, so he knows who's seen him, right, doing it. And so then I called 911 and, told them like, hey, this is what's going on. This guy just waylaid on a dog with a hammer. And, one of their dogs that runs loose and inbreeding. And that's a whole nother story on this, that was going on this street. But the 911 operator wanted to know who it was. And I said, I'm not going to tell you who it was, because you guys aren't going to protect me.
Right.
Like, I don't feel safe divulging that. So then he threatened to arrest me for not. And I'm like, oh, now you can enforce the law? So, yeah.
Since I have a foundation. Go ahead, Mike.
There's just no accountability anymore. There's no consequences.
Well,
Mike, go ahead.
That was a Richard Myers thing. And how I found out about it was I was calling in on different things, similar to what Tanya went through, either drug deals or whatever. And I asked, hey, I called in on this. Don't you have a record of it? And I found out that they were not keeping any records. What was going on is everything was getting passed from the police to the city manager's office. So nothing was being recorded, so they wouldn't have any statistics on anything like this. And so the only ones that were showing up was if it was an EMS type of call for drug related, because they had to have a police officer there on those calls. So those are the only ones that were really getting captured. Now that's changed a little bit, but it's the same thing. If you look at the drugs, we legalized them and said, oh, well, the drug deaths haven't gone up that much. But if you look at the amount of Narcan that we are now using to save so many people from ODs, that it's not a right picture.
And that's not treatment. That's not treating the problem. That's keeping them alive. Thank God we're keeping them alive. But so
they've grown dependent on it. They know they can go get high, and if they overdo it, that somebody's going to give them Narcan. I mean, I have Narcan in my car. Like, I drive around with,
But how weird is that in Oregon that we now are living in a society where keeping Narcan is not, it's a fairly normal thing. It's like, because this is so prevalent. So let me ask you this. Now the camps are being cleaned up at this point. It's not done, but it's getting cleaned up. Where do you go? What do you do? What's the next step?
I think the biggest thing to do is get our Dusk to Dawn camp situated. Right now where it's at isn't the final location for it. To get that set up and then really get a true inventory of our unhoused in our community that are truly want to get help and develop programs. One of the things I did suggest in the last city council meeting was to get cahoots or something like that in town. I mean, they will come if we, choose to go down that route, because our police department is not equipped for it or trained. And this would be a big benefit. I see it in Springfield and it works out very well there. So that would be one of the key things. And then just getting programs in place within Cottage Grove. We had such a mass influx of unhoused. there's no possible way we could help anybody really. But once we get down to a level that's, I think, manageable, then we might have some solutions from a lot of these different identities out there that want to truly help the unhoused.
So, Johanna, I know you had come up with some ideas, and you've been working on this along with the recall. Everybody gives you hell for the recall, but you've been going in and saying, "Here's some things we could do." And I like what Mike's saying. I think you almost have to get. This is just we're just having a conversation, so this is how this works. But to me, you need to do an inventory, like Mike says, but find out who are your homeless people. The people
Right.
in your community who really need help, because you have the tax dollars and the will to be able to help that. But you can't, then you got to get rid of the rest of them. Because if you're
Well,
coming here from other places in California and Oklahoma and all this, you're not our local people, and we can't, as a small community, we can't afford to we don't want to make rural Oregon the center of homelessness and drug addiction,
right. At the same time, we can't just get rid of the others, right? I mean,
Right.
that's that whole put them on a bus and send them out of here. I mean, we can't really do that.
Right.
That's not really compassion. I mean, some people who are from here may decide to go somewhere else too. So people are moving. I get accused of that. I'm not from here, so what am I doing speaking up, right? We do know who the local folks are who've been, around. And what's been done is just perpetuating the problem. Nobody's really taken a look and saying, okay, how can I partner with this person to really help them out of this situation? We just keep maintaining the problem by handing out needles, right? By
Right.
giving them sanctioning places for them to do the drugs, by not enforcing the rules. And just over 2 years ago, a few of us got together. We formed a group because we were speaking at council. We didn't know each other at the time, but we heard each other speak up about a community first approach. And so we got together and we developed a strategy at the time. And that included using like the Conestoga Hut program, take them out of this, the destitution, the community that they're in right now, that's not very healthy, put them in a healthier community, support them, with lots of support, and then work from there. And they've got to be clean and sober, obviously, to teach them the life skills or vocational skills or to whatever their capacity is. That was that. Of course, since then, because that was poo-pooed, that idea at the time, we looked at other programs that were highly successful. So we're looking to bring a classic therapeutic community model to Cottage Grove. So that's another piece. There are many aspects to this, but we really need to rethink how we do charity. We're not supporting people by just giving all the time. That's not helping them to just, it makes us feel good. Oh, I gave them something. But if you watch over time, if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, wow, I've been helping this person for 3 years now and nothing has changed. Maybe I need to do something different. Maybe I have to have more expectations. And I think as a community, a lot of things are changing. We are having higher expectations. We need to set boundaries and guidelines. You give someone Narcan right now, there's no expectation for you to get treatment. And we just keep doing it over and over and over again. And, our paramedics, our fire people, they're getting drained.
I think, maybe we need to go back and look at the definition of words. What does compassion really mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's that old line. You can you can give people a fish or you can teach them to fish. And we really need to, compassion would be not, and I've heard this from most of the nonprofits in the industry of homelessness will tell you, don't give money to people standing on the side of the road. You're not helping.
Right.
And because that's not helping the problem. And how many people do you see doing that? Because it's like a guilt thing. Like, well, now I feel better about myself because I gave them money. And it's really not helping them. It's like going, I'll probably get myself in big trouble for this one, but it's like also when you go to a national park, they don't want you to feed all the animals because they want them to stay wild and fend for themselves, because these are creatures that don't want to depend on you. So we got to get people back so they have good self-esteem. And so is that hard for you guys? I mean, you have ideas. You're not just bad mean people go and get these people out of our side. We want to truly help, and yet you're being painted by the media as heartless and people that are, I think ignorant to how this works. As uncompassionate, and you don't care. You just want to get these people out of here so you have a nice little community again. And it's like, that's really not how it is for you.
I think for me, this has forced me to recognize service to your community. I just always thought that was all on autopilot, right? They're taking care of everything. They got it handled, And so now I feel really inspired to join in, to the community and to support the city and come up with ideas, to make this an awesome place to live.
Okay, but Tanya, let me ask you this real quick. So have you also learned that you can do that?
Can do what?
You just by acting and by going again, not being afraid of what people think of you, but by opening your mouth and speaking out and getting involved and being part of a community, you are, this is so corny, but you are the change.
That's, Johanna's really helped me out as far as breaking out, because I've been living in kind of a state of fear for so long. And it's kind of just, between COVID and then the homeless thing and, other stuff. But
well, there's a great line that comes out of a really old book, and it says, "Fret not, for fretting brings on more evil." So when you fear, you open the door to more evil. But when you act, action, then that scares away the fear. And see, and I think it's interesting in Jewish culture, like everything is an action. Like you can't love without doing something. It doesn't mean I have to show you my love. It means if I love you, I have to do something like open the door or make dinner some night or compliment you. I mean, so if you're part of a community, it doesn't mean you sit around on Facebook and bitch all the time, or you get to go in and hammer people, for what they think. It's like, to be involved in a community, you stand up and you speak out and you take your place. And I think that's what we've lost in America, and it's starting to come back. And the hard part is when you, like Michael and Johanna, speak up, there is a backlash. But I think what I've learned in my life, and from anybody I listen to on podcasts that have done the same thing, that's where the real power is. I mean, when you get past that place where it just doesn't matter, because that the truth will set you free, and so, and I'm not just speaking at you, but you were coming on saying how, this is scary for you and all that, but you're now like a powerhouse. and that's a cool thing. Yeah. I mean, you said you have so much respect for Johanna, and I do too. And for Mike for starting all this, but now you have just as much power as they do. And then the secret is, and what I think Johanna knows this, is then you give that away to other people in the community. They become,
like she did me. She rubbed off on me, and then it's just kind of.
You realize you have a voice now. Hers
I'll
goes
go
over
door to door and have petitions signed, which I only did a few, but she busted her butt. All of them did, but it's it made me realize that here she is out on the front line, and doing all this work, and it made me realize that she needs a support system too. And so if we all pull together and build this awesome team, maybe we can bring about, making the community to where it's thriving and healthy, and, we're all taking care of each other.
I don't think there's
you really have to look behind people, nobody looks into the facts about somebody, they hear it from their friend. Oh, so-and-so's, a liberal, or so-and-so's this or that. And, and then they just run with it without investigating it, fact checking anything. And it's really annoying.
Maybe the new
question, I get guilty of it too.
Maybe the new question should be, oh, Johanna, she's a right-wing MAGA, and say, yeah, but look what she's doing for our town. And I think sometimes when you just hit that, or, oh yeah, because I get this all the time. Rick Janser, he said this, and this, but look what's behind that, and what I really, and look at my 30 years of history of how all of a sudden did this happen, and this comes in. I think when people start attacking you, that's when you're really
when you're
You're
doing
on the
something
rail.
right.
I'm on the rail. Go ahead,
So
Johanna.
I just want to clarify that I'm not a right winger. I'm a very
Oh.
highly independent thinker. That I didn't start the recall. It was that guy in the corner down there, Mike Bork. And I started, paying attention. Wow, these guys have been speaking out for years now. Nobody's listening to them. This isn't right. I'm listening to people. I'm on the radio once a month. Also, people calling up with their voices shaking, saying, "People are coming into my house." And I come home and I find them in my house and nothing's being done. And they're people who are more vulnerable. And I'm like, we need to course correct here.
Right.
And we are the ones who are in charge, and we don't realize that. We're the ones who decide, who's going to be in charge of making those decisions in our community, and on the state level, we get to decide those things. So that's where I focus my attention. I don't get involved in federal politics or,
Well,
any of that stuff. It's like, this is where I know that I can make a difference, and showing other people that, look, if I'm willing to take all these hits and I'm still okay, you can too. Just keep moving forward. Don't think about it. Don't think about, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda done it this way. Just keep moving forward,
Right.
and things will happen. Like you said, things will happen.
Well, do you know that when you look at the voter rolls in Oregon, like the largest voting bloc in Oregon are not independent, and they're not Democrats anymore, and they
Mhm.
haven't been
Right.
Republicans in years. It's the non-affiliated voter, the person who is not an independent, not a Republican, not a Democrat, not a Green Party or a Family Party. It's all the people like me who don't fit into the box that they want us
Right.
to fit into. And that if I was an Oregonian, if those people start doing what you're doing, I'm not a right wing MAGA.
Right.
Although I want America to be great again, so I have a conflict with that. I want everything to be great again. But it's
But
like,
we all have to be the change we want to see, right?
yeah.
And you know what I say, Rick? I'm not right wing, left wing. I'm the whole damn bird. I'm all of it. This
And
is
if you try to pluck my feathers, I will peck on your
right,
head.
exactly. It's like, let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about the specific. Let's get together. That's why Community Strong, Cottage Grove, who is not behind the recall, but a group that I am a part of, had said a couple of years ago, look, we need to get the town together every single month and have a town meeting, because we're not being given that voice. And that is one main function that we do. And we facilitate those meetings. It's not political, but we'll invite people, just like we invited Mike Bork last year. Hey, come tell us what you're doing, because I didn't know him. Come tell us about this recall and why you're doing it. What drove you to do this?
I love
He didn't get a bunch of people together and say, let's do a recall. He just went and acted on his own and said, I'm tired of this,
And
And
look,
he did.
Mike, you did that, and look what it did by
Yep.
speaking out. And then that is the picture of a community. Is usually starts with a person, and then other people who are like-minded start listening, and then you get people who are not like-minded, and then all of a sudden it becomes people affected, and then you make change, which is why I love this story.
Yeah.
In terms of, that's why the first time we did this, just like a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago, was when I heard that you guys had taken on City Hall and you won. And I think that is a powerful message that I think every community in America needs to hear, is that, because I think we forget that it's our town. It's our town. And
They work for us. They
Yeah.
work for us.
yeah, well, they're
Protect our
supposed
rights.
to.
I think that was the one thing I was going
Enforce ordinances and
to
laws.
say, is that I think a lot of people truly believe that they're elected officials that are supposed to be taking care of them in their best interest. And if we don't check them,
Right.
or follow facts or look at different things.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. He said that's what happens. And I think and we should say, there are a lot of really good elected local officials out there. But I think what the community, we often end up doing is we don't watch what they're doing. We don't pay attention, and then they lose track of what we really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I think apathy is not our elected leaders. I'm of the mind that I think politicians love apathetic people because then they can just do what they want.
Right.
But apathy is what gets us to where we are, because for years and years, you just let things go. And then when you have to stand up, it's a challenge, but it also makes your community better once you get past this hard, painful part. And probably that'll be after November 5th when you guys can, I mean, you're working on it now, but once the election happens, you get a new city council, basically, because
Yeah, Rick, we actually have 6 out of our 7 positions that are open right now, and the remaining councilors had decided not to appoint, as this is allowed by the city charter, they decided not to appoint new councilors, but to allow the people to vote, in the councilors to fill out the terms of the other ones. So that's huge, because they could have just said, no, let's, and so now we get to decide. And all the choices, all the people who've signed up, for the most part, are not people who seem to have an agenda. They're not, they're local. We know they want what's good for the community, and it's a different group of people. So it's interesting. It's a different group of people who are applying for candidacy for the most part.
Doesn't it make you feel kind of like when you stand up and get numbers of people, I don't mean to over spiritualize everything, but I do anyway. You break something, like something breaks, so that okay, now, and then people can come on board because you've already opened the door. So and welcoming people and being kind and all that kind of stuff. Because if you have to put a poster or a bumper sticker on your car that says "Choose kindness," I think there's something wrong. Don't we all know that? I think that we should. If I have to have her, to me, that's just like, it's just saying, yeah, I'm probably not. Well, so is there anything else people should be informed in? Like, how can, because this goes all over the country, or the world, actually. What are your recommendations to people if people aren't listening in government? What would you guys have been somewhat successful with this? What do you do, Mike? What's the starting place to go?
I think you got to find out whether you could possibly do a recall, because some states allow it, some states do not. But in any state, there's some sort of recourse, and a lot of it's just bringing the facts to light. And sometimes you may go to a city council meeting and they blow you off because, like Cottage Grove, for the longest time, it was really a one-sided affair, and it really didn't matter. It was run, and this is the way it's going to go, and that's it. But if you can't get it that way, there's other ways of getting people within the community involved, either through a web page or a Facebook page, or a separate meeting type where you get more people that are like-minded, and you start talking about how to solve or do these solve some of the solutions or problems that you have in the community. And then that sort of just steamrolls into other avenues to make changes. And I think the biggest thing is, don't give up, be persistent. But if you don't inspect what you expect, then that's what you're going to get. And you need to inspect everything that the government's doing out there, because a lot of times they are not operating in the residents' best interest for the town.
And Mike said something super important, because I believe this about everything. Don't go bitching at people and take it to you. Go through the steps. What do you want done to you? Do unto others. What do you want done? Go to them first. So if you haven't gone to the city council, don't just start a recall. You go to them and try to have a conversation, but going behind people's back, I hate that. It's like, I had a boss one time, and he said, somebody go in and say, well, so-and-so's not doing this and blah, 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 blah. He goes, did you talk to them? No. Once you talk to them, you can come talk to me. He'd say the same thing about complaining. If something's not working in the community, stop complaining about it and go do something about it. Once you've done something, then you can come back and say, I tried this and nobody's listening. And then you go. But you try to work it out together first, which Mike did for years, and it didn't work. And everybody here did. And then that pushes you to the point where you have to take more action. But always give your opponent a chance to answer your question. And we are a chicken community. We're a chicken society where it's just like we just blah, barf all over them on Facebook, and it's like, oh my God. Johanna, what are your recommendations?
Get informed, find out what the rules are, find out what the statutes are, find out what the codes are, talk to people, but stay open. We have an issue in that people are very closed minded and they have their very narrow viewpoint. Be willing to hear other people's perspectives, because we have, wisdom comes, and people have heard me say this before, wisdom comes when we're willing to suspend our attachment to our beliefs, so that we can really work on those relationships. But if we stay attached, we're not willing to hear what somebody else is, believing, then we can't work on those relationships. We can't have relationships because we're too stuck. So we have to be open and willing to, hear others' perspectives.
When you talk,
validate them.
It's really apparent to me that none of these news organizations have ever had a conversation with you, because you are like an independent cuss, and there's nothing MAGA or left wing about you. You are, I think you're the bird.
Right. The whole damn bird.
You're the bird.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
Out here, it's like they just have to sit down. That's probably why they don't want to talk to you, because it would challenge all their beliefs about, well, wait, okay, so she can't be a MAGA. What now? What do we label her? Oh, Tanya, right. What do you learn about what I want to ask you, and I don't know if this is stupid or not, you don't have to answer, but what do you learn about compassion?
There's a difference between enabling and giving a hand up. We've been enabling by giving them everything, who doesn't want to camp out and party with their friends all day? Really, and have somebody else foot the bill. So yeah, that's enabling. And, they're not hitting their rock bottom. Everybody's heard about the rock bottom, that brought them to a different place. Like, hey, I need to seek help, or, reach out and, do a lot of work. I've done a lot of work in my life. I've had a lot of trauma. I have PTS, I have family members that are drug addicts, and alcohol has, a generational thing in my family. And thank God I don't drink or smoke, and that it somehow, jumped over me, but, it's a hard one. And, a big, huge problem with Oregon was they implemented Measure 110 they put the cart before the horse. They didn't have any of the stuff they promised, in place, rehabs and mental health counseling, and, we're going to do all these wonderful things and we're going to help these people. And then everybody came, and just flooded Oregon, and then COVID hit and defund the police. And it's just been this avalanche of social, stresses, and everybody's anxieties through the roof. And I just really want to find ways to affect change by being really positive and finding solutions and building each other up rather than tearing each other down. And let's be a team, and, let's make our community the best, that it can be. And, take advantage of everything that it has. It has 2 beautiful lakes. It's got rivers. It's got the, the mines, the historical district. It has so much going for it. And,
really nice people.
Yeah. And the people are great. Yeah.
Wonderful people.
Yeah. Yep.
I like you. You're like cutting edge, like right at the, and you were so scared to come on here and look at, you're a powerhouse. I think the other thing that you just said that's interesting is people have to get to rock bottom. Every drug addicted friend that I've ever had said it didn't happen. They ended up in jail 2 or 3 times, but finally that was there. But when they hit that rock bottom, there was someone with compassion there to catch them. So maybe that's the goal that people need to have. Instead of giving money out the side of the window of your car, or throwing another agency in town to, create a whatever, it's allow people to get to the bottom. But when they do, make sure that we have people there so that we can hold them and lift them back up and get them going. I think that's the missing piece of that thing is, everyone, it's sometimes a lot of them, with my friends, it was the captain in the jail or the detective that was there, let him hit the bottom and then was there. They knew they could trust him and go back there. So we got to support these people and do what we're doing. So,
Well, and remove the stigma,
Yeah.
around mental health and the addiction and everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
everybody struggles with something, whether it's food, shopping. I mean, it's,
I would hate to have to get in line and so go, okay, let's see who has the worst problem. And somebody who
Right.
deals with this,
Right.
and you're the one who walks forward and go, wait a minute, come on, keep
Yep.
coming, because lest I judge you, then it comes right back to be judging on me. You guys are awesome. You are like what we're supposed to be like. This is like the most fun conversation for me because it gives me hope. And we've got Johanna, because you've taken these hits. Michael, you started this. You've been in this community forever. You were kind of going through the beginning and with the frustration and stuff. And then Tanya, you're like that new person coming on, going, "Oh, I see what these two are doing." And
I want to help. I want to get involved. You got to get involved. You got to make your voice heard. You got to get out there and meet people and, be the action.
Yeah. Okay, you guys. That was so fun. That was a great conversation. And so anybody out there, if you're in Cottage Grove or nearby or in your community and you need help and you're looking at how this works, just don't be afraid. You guys, thank you for taking your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate you.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
All right.
So, moral of the story. Let's see. What are we going to do here? You know what? I think because that's the picture to me of what we can be. Nobody's in the exact same camp, but we don't belong in a camp. We don't belong in. I'm not a party. I'm a human, and I'm a member of the community. So let me do what I'm good at, and then other people can do what they're good at, and each one of us can do that. But it will never happen if you don't take the risk, open your mouth. And so when you're sitting home with your friends, and what if they say something like, well, I think Johanna is doing it, but say, I don't. I think she's trying to do the right thing. I may not agree with how she's doing it, but I think she's doing the right thing. That's taking your first step. That's how you do it. Stop backbiting and start working together and look at people's heart. That's where their motivation comes from. I'm Rick Dancer. Oh, I want to show you one thing real quick. We're doing a program called The Truth About Timber, and we're having new episodes come up all the time. Take a look at this real quick.
Gone through and they have destroyed, I don't know how many little communities are gone. When any of the agencies or any of the industries try to actually do something proactive and try to do something ahead, it's, well, we have to worry about the spotted owl, or we have to worry about, the marble murrelet. How many spotted owls are burned when a fire goes through and burns it? A fire doesn't care if there's a herd of elk in it. A fire doesn't care if there's a marble murrelet nest in it, or a spot that has to be protected. Fire doesn't care. It's going to destroy it all. Instead of managing the land and actually creating a job and prosperity for small communities, they just have locked it up, and all it is they burn it.
It's a really great series, really good people. We have 2 new ones. We're going to have 6 to 12 by the time we're done. Go to rickdancer.com. You can go to my Spotify. It won't be on Spotify yet, but you can go to YouTube and all under Rick Dancer. You'll find it. Facebook, all of them. So we have a new episode coming out next week. But yeah, it's part of standing up for what you believe in and getting the message straight. All right. I'm Rick Dancer. Have a great night. Share this with your friends too, because Facebook doesn't like me. They hate me.